Hi, hello. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize 2016 special lecture on Medellín. You will find on your seats a feedback form. Please do spend some time at the end of the talk to respond as we value your feedback. All you have to do is to tear along the edges without needing a pen. You may wish to take note that the scanning of ICs for CPD points will be done after the Q&A session at 6 p.m. Lastly, may I also request that you put your mobile phones and other electronic devices to silent mode. Okay, first I would like to invite Mr. Larry Ng, Group Director of Architecture and Urban Design Excellence and the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize Secretary to give the opening address. Larry, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, my distinguished guests and speakers from Medellín. Before I forget, I have to start off with thanking all of you for being here today. It is always very important to have the ground support, so in everything that you do. Now, I'm extremely pleased to welcome you to this very special Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize lecture, held in conjunction with the announcement of the 2016 Prize Laureate yesterday, so it's very fresh. As you would have known by now, the 2016 Prize Laureate is conferred on the city of Medellín. It's pronounced as Medellín and not Medellín, okay? Which I also make the same mistake in Colombia. Now, the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize is a biennial international award that honors outstanding achievements and contributions to the creation of livable, vibrant, and sustainable urban communities around the world. The prize is awarded to cities and recognizes their key leaders and organizations for displaying foresight, good governance, this is very important, good governance and innovation in tackling the many urban challenges faced, and to bring about social, economic, and environment benefit in a holistic way to their communities. Now, to facilitate the sharing of best practices in the urban solutions that are easily replicable across the cities, the prize will place an emphasis on practical and cost-effective solutions and ideas for the benefit of cities around the world. And that's exactly why we organize the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize and also the upcoming World City Summit in July in Singapore. It's really for all the cities around the world to share the best practices and for all of them to learn and share so that together we will all progress. Now, through the prize, Singapore hopes to promote exemplary thought leadership and exchange of ideas among the cities so as to spur further innovation in the areas of sustainable urban development. The inaugural prize was awarded to Bilbao City Hall in 2010 for its holistic regeneration process, and in 2012, the prize was awarded to New York City for its transformation into a livable and sustainable city over the last decade. In 2014, the prize was awarded to Suzhou, Jiangsu Province for its achievement of economic prosperity, social welfare, and environmental preservation. That's one common element across the 4 winning cities. All the cities has been transformed over at least a decade and some 2 decades, all right, into now livable and sustainable city. So just yesterday, we announced the 2016 prize laureate to the city of Medellín, Colombia. Medellín is the second largest city in Colombia after the capital city Bogota, and is recognized for its outstanding urban transformation from one of the world's most violent cities to a model for urban innovation within a span of just 2 decades. Through the bold leadership, long-term plans, and social innovation, I must emphasize Medellín is really the leader for social innovation. The city leaders have tackled its most pressing issues and improved the economy, as well as its citizens' employability and the quality of life. Today, I'm very happy to present to you our two distinguished speakers, Mr. Aníbal Gaviria and Mr. Jorge Perez. Mr. Gaviria is the former mayor of Medellín from January the 12th to December 2015. And before that, he was the governor of the region of Antioquia, right? Antioquia, sorry. Antioquia is actually the province where Medellín is the capital, right? Between 2004 and 2007. So under his term as mayor, Mr. Gavilia's vision was to transform the city into an epicenter of life and equality. And one of his key achievements was the city achieving the lowest homicide rates in the past 40 years. In 2015, Mr. Gaviria was acknowledged as the best mayor in Colombia. Now, an example which I always like to quote of how he has brought down the rate. It was from in 1991 to last year, he brought down 92.1%. Can you imagine? From number one, the most violent city, highest homicide rate, and now is not in the top 50 ranking also, and still progressing. Mr. Perez is an architect himself and the former planning director of City of Medellín. I like to call him, he has a nickname and is known as Boy Dean, because at the age of 28 years old, he was already the dean of one of the famous universities in Medellín. So he's the youngest boy dean in the world. He has held the position as the city planning director from 2012 to 2015, and he has overseen many of the important changes the city has recently experienced. So Mr. Gaviria and Mr. Perez will talk about Medellín's development over the past 3 decades, a time of considerable social and economic difficulties for the city and its population. It will highlight how social and spatial plans with strong participatory work help the city overcome these difficulties and move ahead to a brighter future. I think, as you all know, Medellín has won many, many awards. Some of the more prominent ones is the most innovative city, and even Hosim Award. And in Hosim Award, I think they beat 600 other submissions to take this award. And this award was really the vision or the idea from Mayor Gaviria. So he will share later on what he called Life Articulated Unit. So I'm very happy that the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize is now the pinnacle of all the awards conferred upon Medellín. So before I hand over to the two gentlemen to share their life experience of truly an inspiring story, once again, I would like to thank each and every one of you for your strong support for our speaker series. Thank you and have an enjoyable day.
Thank you, Larry. Before we start the presentation, we would like to screen a short video on Medellín.
Medellín ha pasado de ser, hace 15 o 20 años, una ciudad desafortunadamente agobiada por el dolor, por el miedo, a encaminarse a ser una ciudad para la vida. Y una ciudad para la vida es fundamentalmente una ciudad en la cual sus ciudadanos sean más felices, más humanos, más libres y más justos.
Medellín, Colombia's second largest city, also known as the City of Eternal Spring. Overcoming challenges of uncontrolled expansion and years of violence as a result of social inequalities, it has successfully transformed itself to one that celebrates life and is today a model for urban innovation. With a commitment to prioritizing equal opportunities for all residents, the bold and visionary leaders of Medellín adopted creative and non-conventional approaches to pursue social equity and improve living conditions for all segments of society. The key to the city's success is a series of social innovation and public transport initiatives, contributing to a more connected and equal society. Despite limited resources, these innovative projects affect change where it matters most. At the urban-rural edge, the Circumvent Garden provides communal spaces while limiting urban expansion. A network of escalators in Comuna 13 San Javier, once the most violent neighborhood in the city, overhauls the area with pocket parks and wall mural artwork. The Metro Cable is the world's first cable car system for daily commuting, connecting remote hillside residents to the city. The iconic life-articulated units converted underutilized spaces in the city for communal activities. The Public Utilities Company, EPL, channels 30% of their annual profits into social investment projects.
Medellín was awarded the Kuan World City Prize because it has done an absolutely spectacular job of taking one of the most dangerous cities in the world and converting it into a livable city. We live in a time when billions of people are moving into cities. Many of these cities, especially the new mega cities, are very dangerous and disorganized. Many of them are getting worse, and many of them are looking for role models of cities which have transformed themselves, and no city has done as great a job as Medellín has.
Medellín strongly believes in education and cultural transformation to bring about change in the city. The city works together with its citizens to implement the most impactful projects, such as empowering people to use up to 5% of the local budget for community uses. This helped to earn the people's confidence in the government and instill a sense of dignity. The results of Medellín's transformation are reflected across all levels, from measurable improvements in the economy to overall levels of social well-being.
El futuro de la ciudad tiene que ser un futuro donde exista mayor equidad, mayores oportunidades, donde tengamos un territorio que sea mucho más sostenible y que le ofrezcamos calidad de vida a la gente. Este es un reconocimiento que llena de orgullo a la ciudad y yo por eso agradezco a la organización y a ustedes por confiar en nosotros. Pero es un paso más y es un paso muy importante porque no es el fin de un proceso, al contrario, es el inicio de muchas cosas buenas que vienen.
Medellin's extraordinary transformation will give hope to other cities facing similar challenges around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our first speaker, Mr. Anibal Gaviria.
First of all, I want to apologize because of my English. I try to make the best effort to give you a short vision about the transformation of our city, Medellín. Second, I want to say thanks to URA and to Larry, who has not only the Price Secretary, but a close friend of our city, Medellín. We have the opportunity to host him and part of his team in Medellín, our city, several times, and share with him the transformation and the key factor of the transformation of our city. Thank you, Larry, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and share with all this crowd the proud that we feel because our city wins, and that was announced yesterday, the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize. As Larry says, in the last 4 years, our city was awarded almost, I think, 80, 90, 100 times. Several awards in many sectors, but with any debut, the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize is the highest, is the most important award in the history of our city. And we are very proud because it not only make our citizens happier, but it permit us to show to you and to the world our transformation. Next. I am going to if it's better if, yes. This is the geographical localization of Colombia, our country. Colombia has a population of 48 million people. Is the third largest country in southern Latin America. And then our province that is called Antioquia. Antioquia has more or less 6.5 million people. And then we have the metropolitan area of Medellín. The metropolitan area has almost 3.7 million people, and it's composed for 10 municipalities, in which the principal is Medellín, with almost 2.5 million people. Our two principal problems, I think not only the two principal problems of Medellín, but Colombian problems and Latin American problems are violence and inequity. As you see in the slide, between 1990 and 2000, we have a very like a war in our city. More than 48 million thousand people die in that period in Medellín. And in 1991, we have the highest rate of homicide in the world. And we maintain this very painful first position in that ranking for almost 1 decade. And on the other hand, we have high levels of poverty and inequality. In that decade, in the 19th, we have a extreme poverty index near 20%, 90.4. And at the beginning of the 2000, we have the highest level of inequality, Gini, in Medellín that in whole Colombia. That's the photography, the moment 20 years ago when we start the transformation that we show you and the world today. And you can look at how we fight the violence and how we are winning the fighting against violence. Here you have the homicide rate in 1991, almost 400 per 100,000 inhabitants. But let me say something. Maybe a rate doesn't show the reality, because statistics are very cold. But think on that. I think maybe Singapore has, I don't know, Larry, 5.5 or 6 million inhabitants? 5.5. If you take that rate, it means more than 20,000 murders a year. This is the real date. And every life is a miracle. This is the pain and the like the dark night that we lived 20 years ago. And look at how we work to give it now. Last year, the less homicide rate in 40 years in Medellín. And as Larry says, it means a decrease more than 93, 94 Now we have 20. It's higher too. But this a long step, a big step. And if we continue in this effort, maybe we can in 4 or 5 years to have an Asian or an European rate on our priority, that is respect for life. And look at this very impact slide, is the 50 more violent cities in the world. And here you have a lot of information about this problem. And first of all, you can show how in the last 4 years we passed from 14 to more than 15. Now we are maybe not in the first 100. And the other thing is, you can read here because of the letter, but if you see the first 50, 42 are in Latin American. It shows that I tell to you in the first slide that our bigger problems are city, but society are violence and inequality. And look at other thing. 4 of these 50 are in United States. This 42 plus 4, 46 are in America. And the other 4 are in Africa. No one of these 50 cities are in Asia. I think this is a wonderful statistic for all Asia. You have another problem, of course, but you don't have this painful problem of the homicide in high levels as other continents. And look at how are we going down with poverty. In the last 12 years, we reduced 65% extreme poverty and 60% poverty. But if you take one of the first slides, when in the 19th, we have 90.4 extreme poverty. It now is 2.8. And if we continue within the 4 next years, we can make it 0. 0 extreme poverty in our city, that 20 years behind has 20% of extreme poverty. Let me now share with you how we work and how we make this transformation. First of all, we have a public management model. And in the center of the model, you can see the goals, the principal goals that we search, and these are respect for life and equity. And surrounded in the circle of the life, like we say this public management model, we have 5 cities that we constructed simultaneously to search for the goals. The city school, the safe city, sustainable city, employment city, and healthy city. We work in these 5 cities to make the transformation to give Medellín from the violence and the dark 20 years ago to a city for life today. And we work in this, with these 7 principles. Some of these principles are like the key factors of the transformation, and we share some of them with another laureated cities with the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize, like resilience, like innovation, like participation, which are key factors. 2 in Bilbao, in New York, in Shusho, in our hostage, Singapore. And let me finish with 10 of our most important transformation. And I am going to show you with pictures that is easier to catch. First, metro cable. Metro cable is one of the icons of the transformation of Medellín. It's not only that we make a cable. We don't invent the cable because you have it for hundreds of years here in Europe, in America. But we are the first city to make it a public massive transportation, but not only a public massive transportation. It is the way to put the state and put the benefits of the public space and the investment of the state and the public investment in part of the city that don't have it in the past. Second, electric escalators. As metro cable, we don't invent the electric escalators. You have electric escalators all around the world, airports, commercial centers, but no one, until Medellín do, have electric escalator like a public transportation. Public transportation to make easier for the people to give to the mountains in our city. Third, UVA, Life Articulated Units, Unidad de Vida Articulada. It's another innovation, like Larry says, we are proud about our urban and social innovations. And we are on the top of the world, like a city in this kind of innovation. And you can see this on this side of the slide, a reservoir, a water reservoir. And you have a fan here, because in the past, all these reservoirs are fenced and the people can go there. And around this is the city. And around all these reservoirs are the more poor people without this public space. You can see it with the kid. He is in the street playing because he don't has space to play. And we take out, put away the fence and give it the space for the people. In the tank, the reservoir is working, but now is the center of a kind of social free club for the people. We make 20 of these live articulated units, and in this, that was the first one, 350,000 inhabitants go in the first year to all the facilities that we build in this UBA. Facilities in sport, in culture, in education, formation, and we have another UBAs. This one, UBA de la Imaginación, is the UBA that Larry means, and Larry says that wins one of the more important awards in urban sustainable is the Holcim Award, and Larry was a competition against 6,000 works in all the world. All the world. It's first time, first place. And this one is now nominated in the architectural awards of the Institute Technologic of Illinois. And we have another, yes, this is the fourth biggest transformation, urban transformation, is river parks of Medellín. Here we have our river that is completely contaminated, like was in the past Singapore River. And as Lee Kuan Yew say, the river are the soul of the cities, and you cannot kill the soul. You need to recover the soul. You need to give life to the soul of our cities, and that's we are doing now. And not only to we contaminate the river, but we give the river to the cars. Here you have millions and millions of cars daily, but the river owns to the persons, to the city. And now we are doing this very transformed project that is in the middle of the city. And it's not only a project for the river, but for public space, but mobility, because we are going to put these lines of mobility that are the most important in our city, surrounded the new and future park. 5 is Ayacucho tram. One of, as you say, one of the more important key factors in the transformation of Medellín is the investment in very good mobility. Mobility makes a more friendly, more human city, but more competitive city, higher quality of life for the citizen. And now we have a public transport system with 5 branches. One is the metro, second is the metro cable, third is the metro plus, 4 is the bicycle public system, and 5 is the new tram. And this tram is another innovation of our city, because it used to be the old tram 70 years ago, and now the new tram, and the new tram is the only one in America with pneumatic wheels. And why pneumatic wheels? Because we have very high mountains, and we need to climb. And if you have a normal tram, you can not do it. We have pneumatic wheels to reach the mountain, and then we have metro cable to go to the higher part of the mountain. 6 public bicycle system. You, in our system, with the 5 branch in Medellín, you can go every branch of the system with a single target. You can go bicycle, and then you can take metro cable, and you can take the metro. 7, we have 3 slides about this. It's the investment in education. As I say in the first words of that presentation, we have 2 big problems: violence and inequality. And the 2 biggest tools to fight against violence and inequality are public space, because in the public space is in which the persons are equal. No matter if you are rich or poor, if you are woman, if you are has 70 years, if you are a man, if you are a kid, in the public space you make all the people equal. That's we want to invest in many and quality public spaces. And we invest much of the money in the public space of mobility, because in many times the people thinks that public space is only public universities, public schools, but mobility, metro cable, tram are the more important public space to make a city more equal. And the other tool is education. And first one, education for the early childhood. We build the best gardens for the child in the more unequal lands of our city. We build 9 of these gardens, and the previous government of our city built another 9. We have now 80 of these that are as good as the best garden in every part of the world. Second, of education as equality is in the primary and secondary education. And we build very huge and high quality schools that we call master schools. This one is another nominated in the Institute of Technological of Illinois in Chicago, United States, for the Architectural Award. And third, in education is higher education. Now we are building 2 new university campus, ciudadelas universitarias, for each one for 10,000 new young people to have the higher education. But one of the most important things is that one of these, it will be constructed in this part of the city that for 100 years was a prison. Now we take out the prison and we are building a university. That is part of the change, of the transformation of Medellín. 8, Medellín Innovation District. Of course, if we want to maintain innovation like a part of our ADN, we need to cultivate the culture of education and to impulse and make the circumstances to invest in education. And we are constructing one district to not only the universities, but the local and the foreign investment to invest in companies with focus in innovation. 9, Medellín Circumvent Garden. As you say in many of our slides and in the metro cable, the tram, the electric escalators, we are a city of mountains. We are very different from geographically from Singapore, because we are in a very narrow valley with mountains 1,000 or 2,000 meters higher than the valley, surrounded our city, and many of our citizens live in part of these mountains. And we have a problem with this because in sometimes we have land slices like this 25 years ago, and many people dies. And we need to stop the city to grow to this part, because it's not good for the people there, but for all the valley, because you destroy the climate, you destroy the creeks, you destroy the forest, and if you destroy that, you destroy the environmental for your city. And we are now making the Medellín Circumvent Garden that is all around the city, making a limit to this growth, but a limit with development. It's not like a wall. It's development like a limit. Give it, this part of the city, more public space and good public space for the people that lives there. We have some of the facilities and the public space that we are building in the Circumvent Garden. And 10 and last, the Moravia Garden. This was waste, I don't know how do you say, yeah, of the city for 20, 30 years. Millions of tons, and many families live there. These are not trees or other things. These are persons that are making his life there. In this part of the city used to live more or less 2,000 families. I say used to live is not a form of life, it's only survive. But now, this is the change. Is from this to this. This is a garden of life. That's we want to make our city a city of life in all his lands. And in this, with this last slide, I want to emphasize two things. It, like other project, is not a project of only one term. My term as a mayor was 4 years, and previous another 4 years, and because we don't have re-election, immediately re-election. And that's a work for not only one mayor, but several mayors. But not only the government of the city, the academy, the work people, the public and private partnership, all working with the achievement of community goals, like improve our respect for life and improve our inequality. And the other thing, last to say here, is that we in this Moravia Garden work together with a brother, with a sister city, our very friendly city of Barcelona. And that, Larry, is very important, because it's how cities can help each other, and how can cities learn one from other. And this is very important in the frame of the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize, and next in July in the frame of the World City Summit that Singapore hosts, is the possibility to share and the possibility to make links between cities, to make projects like that, and to improve the quality of life of its citizens. If any of you want to deep inside of this and the transformation of Medellín, you can go to this direction and give more details. And I don't know, Larry, if at the final of the presentation, Jorge and I can answer some questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gaviria. Next, please join me to welcome Mr. Jorge Perez, architect and former planning director of Medellín. Mr. Perez, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for this very kind invitation to be here in Singapore presenting our city's experiences. Thank you to URA, the organizers of the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize, and thank you to Larry and his team by all his kindness with us. It's a nice experience to share this space with Mayor Gaviria, my boss, my inspirator in many senses about this city process, and I will try to explain you in the shortest form what I used to call the citizens process or the citizens project that we have been building in Medellín along the last 3 decades. This is just the surroundings of the city. You can look at the valley, which is a very narrow one, and it's urbanized almost everywhere along the river that comes from south to north here. This is the eastern side of Medellín, the south and the north, and this is the downtown. Here is the downtown, that you will hear me talking about that for a little while. So this is my presentation, and this picture, I like it very much. It's by a photographer from Barcelona that was invited to develop a book about our city. And this is the city that we have, this city of inequality, this city of the truthful people of Medellín, and the other city there. There are 2 or many more than 2 cities inside this valley, and we have been working for a long time trying to transform that into the city that we have today. As Mayor Gaviria has explained you, this is the inspiration of our government, and this is the inspiration of the cities that we believe this urbanized world needs today, to talk about equity, to talk about life as a priority. So what you will see is the process that has ended along the last 4 years with this inspiration. As Mayor says, this is the location of the city. The city is in the northwestern side of Latin America because we are the most important city in the northwest of South America. We are located close to both oceans, and let's say that this region, it's a rainforest, a deep rainforest that is a natural preserved area that has been the obstacle of the communication, of integration between Central and South America. So we are in the middle, and along around these mountains and around this rainforest, we have a kind of block, territorial blocking for the integration of the city and of the country to the rest. I will ask you to read the information on the slides because I will not have time to explain every data along the presentation. So this is a satellite pictures that shows you that we're in the end of South America's Cordillera de los Andes, the Andes Mountains. So we are located in a valley, in a very narrow valley, 1,500 meters above sea level. And it's very nice because we have the river coming from south to north. So the light of the sun in the morning lights these mountains, and in the afternoon these ones. So the light of the valley changes along the day. And it's very nice, this picture, because it explains something which is very important for the city. As far as we are located in the Andes, we are so far away from ports. So our competitiveness for industrial productions and things like that were depending for many years by a railway that connected the city along this river to the coast. But in the 60s, the Colombian network of railways was destroyed. So later, I will explain you what it means for Medellín. So as a short story of the city, we have been fighting against the challenge of urbanization because we had great urbanization along the second part of the 20th century. In the beginning of the 20th century, Medellín was 100,000 people. In the middle of the century, we were 350,000 people. And now we are 3.7 million in the metropolitan region. So you can imagine what that means to have the population growth about 10 times in just 65 years. So these problems of immigration with, as a consequence of rural violence, economic crisis, converted this problem, urbanization process as a big problem for the city. And this is the explanation of that. In red, you have the cities in the 50s, the 10 municipalities along the Metropolitan Valley. This is Medellín. And in yellow, this is the city that we have today. So you can understand that this process of urbanization is a big challenge for any city in the world because it is impossible through planning to respond to this way of growing. This is our dream, to have a city preserved in the green areas of the borders and with the river transformed into a park. This is the inspirational idea of Mr. Gaviria, and we have been working a lot for that. I will just try to explain you that along the presentation. So this is what we call the circumvent garden. This is the river, and our dream is to structure the valley and the city as an ecological system. This is the image of the city that we have, the city there, and the informal settlements on the borders like this. So we want to work for this, trying to integrate this urban community and these rural areas into a sustainable and a more equal society. Here we have 72% of our land, 72% is rural area, but we only have around 100,000 people there, so mainly our population is urban. This is an image of downtown, the metro. The river goes along this zone. This is the regional airport. We have two airports, the regional one inside the valley and the international one in 1 hour away, 40 kilometers away from the city. So this is what explains what happened. We have from a little town to a big city with social, industrial, urban growth in the beginning of the century, with strong economic and social and political development, but with huge problems from the 70s. Great urbanization, informal settlements, a strong immigration with these problems of violence that make inequality and social exclusion a huge problem for us. Social and political segregation, weak democracy, unemployment and poverty. That was Medellín in the end of the 70s and the beginning of the 80s. We have a tradition of planning, a tradition of associative civic work, a cooperation of the stakeholders of the society. We have strong institutional development, a system of universities which is very, very powerful, and a strong regional identity. This is just to show you that in 1949, Corbusier came to the city, to the School of Architecture. So we have a tradition for planning, because since 1950, we created the first plan piloto regulador, regulator plan for the city. So these are plans that you can read later when you receive the presentation that will explain you that the city has been trying a lot to use planning as a tool for solving the questions, for solving the problems. So in the 90s, we had a strong crisis. Medellín was only a crisis. The Colombian destruction of railway system, the railway generated isolation and loss of competitivity. So we have economic crisis as a consequence, with a strong industrial slope. We had the coffee global price crisis, and this problem of the almost 50% of our population living in informal settlements. So that was a kind of economical collapse with a rate of unemployment around 33%. Today is 9.5. So that became a big question. The other question was what I call a social collapse, because we had a weak democratic development, social and political problems, corruption, drug trafficking, gangs, violence, terrorism, and a strong exclusion and inequality. So in a way, Medellín in 1990 was an unviable society. These are key moments. First, in 1986, our country created the local election of leaders, strengthening local democracy. So we started to have election for mayors. Then in 1991, we have a new constitution that promotes the respect of the local communities and to promote decentralization. From 1990 and on, the national government, because of our crisis, created what we call Consejería Presidencial para Medellín, which is a kind of ministry, special ministry for the city, that has started a process that will be the base of the transformation. Then in 1996, we created what we call the municipal planning system, a regulation, a local regulation that obligates in a city to develop participatory planning for the main decisions of the mayors and of the alcaldía. And then we created this, which is going to be very, very important, the strategic plan for Medellín and the metropolitan area, which was also a participatory strategic planning process that created a kind of collective agreement. Is like you call the conceptual plan for Singapore. So that's very important. And then the last one tool, among many others, is the Plan de Ordenamiento Territorial, which is the land use plan. All these are long-term structures that has been contributing for the transformation of the city. This is the book of the strategic plan that has finished its period last year. This is a group of images, I will show them very fast, that shows you how we used architecture, public spaces, urban design, infrastructures to create spaces for life. And that's not only good architecture or good spaces, it's more than that. It's a political will to create public life, to transform a conflictive society into a community which is able to walk together to find a way to live. It's one of the roles that architecture and urbanism has been developing for our city. It's a way of promoting life, as Mayor has said, and is a way of creating conditions for co-responsibility and shared life. All these spaces have been used to recreate, reinvent our ways of living. Let me tell you that this is an open-air auditorium. You can have movies, concerts, and festivals in this beautiful space. You have the machine for the projections of the movies and things like that. So we have been inventing things. And also the transportation system, as Mayor has explained you, it's a tool, it's a way of using infrastructure for social purposes. It's not only for transportation, it's for bringing accessibility for excluded communities that are living in the surroundings of the city. So this kind of architecture has not only the purpose of being functional architecture, but also a symbolic one to create the sense that public life is the most meaningful thing for creating a community, for creating a livable city. So public libraries, public spaces, new schools, kindergartens, sports facilities like this, things like that has been created as a tool for transforming our lives. And this is, as Mayor has explained here, a very meaningful project because it represents something which has been very, very important in Medellín. Through this collective citizens project, we have been able to create a long-term vision and to have continuity among successive governments. You have to understand that we have many parties and many differential political leaders, so it's very difficult when you change a mayor because many things can change. But in the case of Medellín, we have been able, through this critical situation, to create a kind of agreement, collective agreement, that in some way obligates the mayors to respect the processes of the city. So when a mayor wants to stop a process, he has to respond to the communities. The communities ask why, how, what are you going to do? So this project started almost 14 years ago with the master plan for transforming this, and this is the master plan designed by the National University. This was the barrio upon the mountain, and this is, as the mayor has explained you, what it happens today. Something that is very important is that this homicides rate of the past has become a problem because most of the families that live around here are led by women. So this is a cooperative that has been supported by the alcaldía to create a way of surviving through the production of flowers and food. And this is the escalators. This was the existing situation. This is the transformation now. And this is how it is today. So people continue is all the time trying to walk in the transformation. Another thing which has been very important is this. We have learned to work in a long-term vision. This is the conceptual plan for the master planning for the transportation systems of the region. So we are working with a continuity to develop this network. And the city has applied to multimodal systems. We already have metro, cable cars, trams, streetcars, public shared bikes, and we also have a BRT Metro Plus. So we have a very strong system that keeps on going and is part of the strategy for social inclusion and for accessibility for all. I will start here the results of Mr. Gaviria's government. So the first part was the context and where we come from. This is the beautiful project that Mr. Gaviria has led, which is what we call Unidades de Vida Articulada, articulated life units. What it means is very powerful because this was the existing condition. If you look at these images, it was a master plan for lighting the valley. And we understood that there were like black holes in the middle of high dense barrios. And in those black holes, we have problems of like the inexistence of public spaces and a lot of conflicts inside those barrios. So Mayor Gaviria inspired the idea, how can we share these green areas, these potential public spaces for the people, preserving the infrastructure, which is strategic because it's the water supply, but solving the problem of the absence of public space for these communities. So from this, you have the diagnosis where how were the statistics, the data of violence in those dense barrios, and how could we create this? And the mayor invented a sentence that I like very much, which is, destroy the fence to become closer. That in Spanish is the same word, because fence and closer is cerca. So what mayor said is, destroy the cerca para estar más cerca. Destroy the fence to become closer. So this is how it was. And this is what the architects and the urbanists did, transforming these public spaces into this. A fantastic place for civic life with culture, recreation for kids, for senior people. And all those projects were created with the participatory process of the community. In the first stage of the project, the community decides what the project must have, how it's going to be with the support of the alcaldía. Then the architects designs these beautiful and marvelous projects. So from this to this. So it's a kind of, how can you prioritize the necessities of the communities, and how can the state become a partner for the community's transformation, and not only the authority. And this is the famous project that won the Global Housing Award, as Mayor has explained to you before, among 6,000 projects from all the 5 continents. Again, the campus, the university campus over the ancient jail, close to the library. This is the existing library, and the metro station with the metro cable, the cable car here. So it's a kind of centrality that transformed this close to the escalators here. So this is the most violent barrio ever, and this is the strategy to create a campus for 10,000 students with universities. We have used multi-scale planning because one of the problems that you don't have, but we have, is that we are a huge country with a lot of immigration inside. So if we don't plan the ecological footprint of this municipality in the region, it's impossible to be viable and sustainable. Mayor Gaviria was the former governor of this region. So he's clear enough about the problems of the region and about the role of Medellín. So it's very nice to have him as a mayor because he can understand the responsibilities of Medellín with the region, but also the dependency of Medellín from the region. Because our energy, our water, our oxygen, our food, amongst many other resources, come from this. Our ecological footprint is around this scale. So we need to plan the region, the metropolitan area, and the municipality at the same time. So that's very important because in many places in the world, many cities has abandoned regional planning. And in Medellín, we keep on working about that. So we're thinking all the time about the little scale of the projects, acupunctural projects like the UBAs, but also about planning and regional development and also regional infrastructures. So this is very important because it's the master plan that with Mayor Gaviria leadership we have developed until the 2027. So it's a 12 years long term plan that will orientate the city for many years. This is what was happening. The urbanization growth over the mountains. This has been an obsession of Mayor Gaviria for many years until now. And the destruction of this rainforest and this countryside was very important. So, because it's the collective landscape, the collective skyline of the city, but also the ecological system that we must preserve. This was informal settlements. These are rich people homes, but this is the official social housing policy. All this must be stopped. So the strategy is to re-urbanize, redevelop these wide areas that are along the river, grow inside a more compact city. So the transformation of this regulation that obligates to have housing only along the borders, and to transform that to create a priority to densify these zones. So this is what we want to stop. And this is the project that Mayor Gaviria has explained, this circumvent garden that is a way of stopping, controlling, regulating the borders, creating new ways of using that spaces for the poorest communities, and this project is under process now. This is the landscape, so we want to preserve that. We, as Singapore, are one of the most biodiverse countries of the world. We are one of the 5 ecological water stars of this planet. So we must preserve our nature, we must preserve our rural areas. And we also have problems of risks, ecological and natural risks in these borders with landslides and problems like that. So this is the figure that we saw in the beginning, the dream of Mayor Gaviria to create these borders, green borders, this river as a system of parks that will integrate along the rivers that comes from the top of the mountains to the river through a kind of ecological integrated system. This is the master plan that we defined that promotes the master plan of the river parks with redeveloping this, with a redevelopment strategy for these areas, with the downtown master plan the Civic Hall Master Plan, and this polycentric development proposed in the traditional barrios to create centralities that will promote a new way of mobility, promoting what we call proximity urbanization, because we can walk, you can take bikes and use services closer to your homes. And these are macro projects to preserve the borders, to the continuity of the circumvent garden. So we have developed these instruments. You can read later when you receive the presentation all the information. But that means that we use the detailed planning until this scale. So we come from the regional and municipal scale to this. And this is very important because we have prioritized a multimodal system with the non-motorized mobility as the first priority. We have inverted the pyramid of mobility. So in the last priority will be the private car. Only 14% of our people uses cars. And yesterday, we have a huge problem, environmental problem in the city because the quality of air. For the first time, we are starting to have consciousness about the problems of our environment by air. So Mayor Gaviria has been conscious about that, so we promoted this, transforming the city from this to this, prioritizing a non-motorized pedestrians and bikes mobility, then public transportation system, then logistics, and then finally the private cars. So this is the type of planning that we developed, trying to create the transformation of the mobility system. Our proposal is that along the next 10 years, we have 40 kilometers of bike lanes today. We hope to have 400 in the next 10 years. And the same for pedestrian pathways. So we will create a new system of public facilities for mobility. And this is what we already have. This tram line was built along the period of the Mayor Gaviria's government, and it's going to start commercial operation next month. And these are cable cars, which are also finishing 2 new cable cars by the end of this year. The bike lanes that keeps on going, these are public bike sharing system. These were 3 international competitions that we have developed to promote participatory processes to define the more strategic projects of the city. Then we have a competition for the river parks, second for the Civic Hall, and the third for Carrera Bolivar. You will see them immediately. This is the system along the river that we hope to be redeveloping. This is the area. It's the more accessible, the best located, the best supported by facilities, equipment, and services. So we hope to transform that. For that, we have created this competition that is called Civic Hall, with a master plan for these hills, natural parks. This is Carrera Bolivar, and this is the river parks competition. So this is the existing situation of the river, highways, and a kind of frontier, a kind of limit between 2 cities. So we must transform that and this from highways and functional systems to this, a livable city, a more integrated city, let's say like Mr. Lee Kuan Yew inspired in Singapore, the river as the life of the city, as the base of the development of Singapore. We hope also, with the leadership of Mayor Gaviria, have been working about this, transforming this river into a system that also includes mobility, but not only mobility. It's a process that will include the sanitation of the river to recover the water in 90% of its 92% of its quality in the next 4 years, to recover the connections between the 2 borders, to create new public spaces, and to generate the transformation of all these into housing and services facilities. To create conditions for that, like the mayor has explained, this innovation district, which is located here, close to the most important public university, close to the botanical garden, and close to the future river parks. So, and we also have inside the metro, the BRT that goes along this. So it's a very well-connected area, and we will have this. Then, after this, you will see the competition that won the international one for the river park system. It's this, transforming the river into a botanical garden. This is the image that we have today, and this is our dream. We have started this first stage of the development of the project, and this is the image 1 month ago. You have the underground highways that is going to be multiplied per 2 in its capacity. You will have a metro system line there, and you will also have a park over here. So you will increase the quantity of public spaces, but also the connections through pedestrian bridges among the rivers. So this is the dream. A 19 long kilometers project that will be developed along the years with the transformation of these redevelopment areas, the creation of new public spaces and new facilities, but with a strategic vision that means a compact city for social inclusion, with urban redevelopment for metropolitan and regional articulation, with the river sanitation process, with multimodal mobility and new public spaces. And the dream of Mayor Gaviria and for all of us is to integrate the mountains, the river, the hills, and the little rivers that come from there. More than 50, I suppose, rivers we have inside the municipality coming from the mountains. So that will become an integrated ecological system for sustainability and for the quality of the air, of the water, of the whole nature that we have inside the city. So these are some information about River Parks project that you can be looking for after the reception of the presentation. So this is our dream, to have this ecosystem of hills and creeks and the river interconnected as the main ecological network of the whole city. It's possible, and we think we can do it. To end, Larry, I will recover this idea. In 1987, Singapore and Medellín, among 18 cities more, 20 cities in total, participated in a network to dream about the transformation of our cities. Today, we are with Singapore in this situation. So one of the strategic city projects of the strategic plan of 1997 was to reconnect or reintegrate Medellín to the global system of cities, because we were segregated and isolated in that moment because of our problems. And this is very nice to show you the result. In those years with Singapore, with Sydney, with Bilbao, with Toronto, we were part of that network of 20 cities. And today, these cities that I have shown you has been awarded as prized or as winners or as special mention along the years by Lee Kuan Yew Prize. So we have come from that moment to this. We are now the awarded city for the Lee Kuan Yew Prize. So that's very, very important, truly important for our people, because we were feeling isolated and now we are feeling integrated and part of the world. And that means access to economical development, for social development, and for the opportunity to being a good city. To end, just some statistics that complements what the mayor has explained to you before. We have come from unemployment rates of 23% to 9.5 around this data today. We have developed education, healthcare, recreation, and public transportation with public spaces and culture for most of our people. So between Gini ratio and incomplete social inclusion, we keep on working to develop equity or equality development for the communities. We have a strength in the city. We have a lot of support by our citizens. We have a strong budget. The people pay a lot for the city, but we also have a very nice asset, which is EPM. EPM is the Empresas Públicas de Medellín, which is the public utility company. It's 100% public and municipal property. It's the second largest company of the country, and is a multi-Latin company that works from Mexico to Chile. That's a very strong asset because it brings part of its benefits of every year to social investments. So Medellín is actually a city with a strong budget power. We are able to invest because we have enough money, but also we have won, with the leadership of Mayor Gaviria, the best result in 35 years as the best management, public management in Colombia among cities. So we have the best standard of public management in the country. That's very important because you can not only transform a city with urbanism, infrastructure, and that. You have to have money, resources, and you have to have transparency and good administration. So the development of our institution, the development of good governance has become a very powerful thing for Medellín. As Mayor Gaviria explained, this is fantastic. And that's what explains that it means a process, because the continuity of the challenge has been the continuity of the support of the society. It's not a miracle. It's a work in progress that we have to keep on doing for the next years to come. And this is what I haven't been explaining you. The highest standards of public management in Colombia are represented among these statistics of the superation of poverty, extreme poverty, unemployment rates, inequality, and violence. So this is the resume of everything. Medellín is a social process with collective leadership, with long-term vision, and with the political will and strong leadership of mayors like Mayor Aníbal Gaviria. That's what he calls a city for life. So this is my presentation, and thank you for your very kind invitation.
We have now come to the question and answer session. There are microphones located along the aisle, or put your hand up to be passed the microphone. Please also introduce yourself before asking your question. For the audience who are watching a live feed of this forum in the white room on level 3, do let our colleague in the room know if you would like to raise any questions.
Well, this is truly an inspiring story of what they call from crisis to inspiration. You never know, because we in Singapore, we take things for granted because we live in a very safe and secure society. You can't imagine in 1991 in Medellín. Yesterday, Kishore, chairman of the nominating committee for the prize, he himself experienced it in the early 90s. I quote what he said yesterday. He was, I think he was in a hotel, and he need to go across the road that is only 5 meters wide for the meeting. So what they do is that they give him an escort, go down to the basement, take the car with the escort, drive across the road 5 meters, go down to the basement, the escort will escort him to the building all the way up. So that was that kind of society in the early 90s, I think beside Medellín, probably also in other parts of Colombia. Now it's truly a place where if you have the opportunity, it's now known as the city of eternal spring. So it has spring weather all the year through. So let's, ladies and gentlemen, they are truly the deserving of the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize. Let's put a hand together to congratulate them. Congratulations again. I think there are many, I think, come of decades later, or decades or two later, 2050 or 2040, you find that the world population, about 40%, or 3 billion people, will be living in informal economies like that. This is under the United Nations predictions. So with cities like Medellín leading the way, I think there are many other cities could learn from one another and of course make the world a better place. Well, they have shared their inspiring story. If you do, it's a time now for you to engage our former mayor, our former Planning Director of Medellín. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. The mics are ready. Anyone? You want to know about how they do it or whatsoever? Please. It's open to the floor now. Yes. You just have
Hi,
to
yes,
put your name.
Yo Hwang Ju, architect. Okay, actually before I came for this presentation, I mean my image of Colombia is drug lords and violence. And so I'm really impressed, and I want to congratulate the mayor and the architect, the planner, for the fantastic work they've done. I mean, within 25 years, you've transformed a city from that kind of situation to the current situation. I think you've actually beaten Singapore to it, because we took 50 years and you're taking only 25 years. So actually we have a lot to learn from you. The thing that really I want to question is, there must have been a central figure in this whole movement, you know, because you always need a visionary leader and a very strong political leader. I mean, like in Singapore, our case is Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. I mean, how he transformed Singapore from the time in 65 to now. So I'm just wondering, is there like a particular person, a particular leader that is like the architect behind the whole economic, social, you know, whole transformation from 1990 to right now? Or is it just the education, or is it just infrastructure development, or is it legislation, or is it like religion, you know? So I'm just wondering whether is that, what is the key impetus, what is the thing that triggers this whole transformation process? And the other thing I noticed was quite interesting was the fact that from the pictures, the cities look very clean, you know. And I wonder whether is it because it's a cultural kind of, it's a habit to be clean. Or like in Singapore, if it's clean, it's because we've got lots of cleaners to clean up the mess. Okay, I mean, and then the other thing I thought was quite interesting was when he mentioned about the bottom-up approach in their development. You know, how they listen to the community's needs. I mean, in Singapore, sometimes we have what you call a top-down approach. I think that is one of our weaknesses. So these are kind of questions that I ask, but mainly, what is the main thing that triggers this whole transformation from the 90s to right now? Thanks.
Well, I think you have in a transformation like our transformation, you have some important things, but you are searching for the principle. And maybe I would say that the principal factor is continuity. And it's something that is similar to Singapore in some ways. Because I think if you don't have the continuity that you have in these 5 decades, you maybe don't have the transformation that you have. But there are different continuities in Singapore and in Medellín. And we used to say, and that is like a formula, a model that I construct with my brother, who was former governor of Antioquia too. And it's that a transformation of a city or a transformation of a society is not, but in our case, only a government, because our government are 4 years. It took several good governments, successive, synchronized. It's one model with 4 parts. Several, with only 4 years, you cannot make a transformation. You need several governments. Good governments in terms of integrity, in terms of efficiency, good administration, people participation. Successive, because you can have a good government 4 years, and another not as good 4 years. It lose the 4 years of good government. You need to be successive. And synchronized is the last part of the form, and for me is one of the most interesting because it means that it's not the same person, because in the last 20 years we have like 7 mayors and many others in the government. It's not the same party. I know I am not the same party of the previous mayor and the others too. But you need to have same principles. You need to have same big projects. You need to have long-term planning, and you need to you have long-term vision of your the goals of your city, and to share it with the other government. If you want, as I say at the first words of this answer, there are many things, not only one, but maybe if you are searching for the principle, maybe it's continuity, because if you don't have it, you cannot make a good and big transformation. Let me say something very simple but real. If you as mayor make a project that took 4 years, it is an important project. But if you make or start a project that take 12 years, it's a bigger one, because it not only took your government, but other government. You don't, as we say in Colombia, you don't inaugurate, you don't give it to the people, but you start another finish, and it's a bigger project. You need many people to be engaged for that project to make big transformation. I don't know if Jorge want to.
Just to complement Mayor Gaviria, I will say that we don't have a leader like Mr. Kuan. That's completely different in the case of Medellin. We didn't have this idea of savior in our crisis. The savior in those moments was the community, because we as a whole community understood that we have to share the problem together, build the solution, and start to work for that. So I think the best good practice that Medellin can show is that a strong local process, strengthening democracy, participatory processes, is the opportunity to have what the mayor has said, continuity. That continuity is based in a people, because we have had different leaders, but the city has been going on. And that's the main secret about Medellin. The secret is inside the community, especially because we, on the elections, the mayor is not elected by a strong majority. You have a strong debate, local debate. So a mayor in Medellin, to be elected, has to have a strong proposal. And that proposal has to be connected with the people. That's what Mayor Gaviria did. He was able to develop a strong campaign to show these marvelous projects that we have explained before this. So I think that the secret is the collective process. And I strongly believe that every city, any city of the world, even in the worst crisis, can create solutions if they are able to work together, like Singapore has done and like Medellin is doing.
Actually, I like to use 3 Ps to actually describe the Medellín and also perhaps in the case of Singapore. The first P is purpose. You have a purpose, what you set out to do, and that's what they have. The second P is passion. In other words, you have passionate people, professional people, political leaders who are passionate about what they want to achieve for the vision. But having passions is not sufficient. And I think the third P, persistence, participatory, which they have said, or perseverance, will end it up all in order for you to implement and to translate the plans into reality of the vision. In the case of Medellín, actually, if I could share that, it is not without sacrifice. Our dear mayor lost his brother, who was also a governor at the time, before he came out to become the governor and then subsequently the mayor. His brother was kidnapped and his brother was murdered or killed. Am I right? I'm so sorry to say that. But the family has sacrificed, and he knows what it means to really bring up the society in Medellín. For example, they have shown you the circumvent garden. How do they do that? It's a very good initiative. First, it stopped the spread of the informal economy all the way up the hill that may cause landslide and problems. That means safety issue. And secondly, they create a garden, heavenly walkway, they call them, for the people. And thirdly, which is what Perez said, participatory. When they built the garden, they're very inclusive. They get the residents in that area to actually construct the footpath and be part of the contribution. That's ownership. So I think involving the society, involving the community is also what we are all trying to do, right? So they have done and gone ahead. And that's why I think it's truly an inspiring story. Okay, anyone else has any questions? This is your time for you to learn. I know we are different, all right, but in different contexts, but I'm sure you do have some other questions. Yes, Elaine.
Hello, I'm Elaine, planner. I have two observations that I'd like to share if you could respond. The first one I realize is on the participatory planning. I think you are ahead of your time because you already ordinated that in 1996. And I think at that time, participatory planning wasn't exactly the trend at that point. But I understand where you're coming from because while we talk about participatory planning as a way to empower people, to make the citizens feel heard and to plan together, you are actually using it to push a long-term agenda in terms of continuity. So I thought that was very smart way of using participatory planning. And I think it gives us a different insight because right now, the whole talk about participatory planning today is all about empowering the people. It's about giving people a voice, but we forgot that it is about continuity because that's what the people is demanding from the authority. So I wanted to know, how did you ensure that there was equality in the voices, that you actually have captured the voices of most of the people, especially in Medellín where you have people with, from the lowest class all the way to the higher socio-economic classes, because you have a very high Gini coefficient. So how do you capture all the voices of everybody and give them all equal voices? So that's my first question. Maybe, should I go on to the, okay, maybe the first question first.
Yes, I don't know if I understand, but it's how we hear all the voices in our city, because we have many kind of voices in the participatory system or process. Well, I am going to maybe give a part of the answer. We have participatory budget that is 5% of our budget. And we make a vote once in a year. And the people vote for, in all the city, but in his neighbor, to elect some people of the neighbor to be like the representatives in the budget. First one. And at the same time, they elect sectors. They define directly in the vote, with the vote of the people, sectors of priority of investment. And then the representative took with the government, the municipal government, the major office and planning, and work together with the representatives to make the details of the investment. But the people elect the representative and the people choose the sector of priority. It's very directly intervention of the people in the participatory budget. And the other form or directly participation, and all the voices can be there because all the people can vote in the election of the representatives and the priority of the sectors. But the other is that we call pedagogical urbanism, and it's the people can be involved in the design of the lines, the basic lines of the projects, of the interventions. Let me give an example. The live articulated units that you see in our presentation. The first step is to make like a work with the people like here in our city and present the live articulated unit, but the people can say, we want in the live articulated unit one pool. Another can say that we want a music hall. And there is of course, more complex and with a standard method. And the people make the frame of each live articulated unit. You have some like principles, but you have one live articulated unit that is more, has more cultural spaces, because the people of that neighbor choose that. And you have another that is more connected with the sports. But in all large articulated units that are like social free clubs, you have sports, you have cultural, you have educational, you have participatory, communitarian spaces. But in ones, more than one, in others, they shape with the participation, the design of the future intervention.
Yeah, I would like to say that behind everything along this process, superating the crisis, participatory process were the base. So we cannot do anything else than that. As a consequence of that, in 1996, we created what we call the planning participatory system, which is an obligation for the mayor. And in Colombia, when you want to be elected as a mayor, you have to subscribe your candidature with a program, and that program becomes an obligation. And the first 6 months of government, Mayor Gaviria has to develop what we call the development plan. And every investment from the alcaldía has to be developed within that plan. And that plan has a strong participatory process that lasts for 6 months to be approved with the participation of the communities. Inside the little scale in the barrios, we have what we call the local development planning process, which is a participatory process. Then we have what we call the participatory budget. Then we have what we call the POT, which is the Plan de Ordenamiento Territorial. As an example of that, we approved that plan in December 2014. Between 2013 and 2014, Mayor Gaviria created a council of advisors with, integrated by around 12 personalities for the city. But by regulation, we have what we call the Territorial Planning Council, which includes 32 or 33 leaders from different representations of all the diversity of the population, that by law, they have to bring a concept about the plan. But along those 2 years, we have more than 240 public meetings like this, with such a scale from 20 to 12, from 12 to 20 persons until 1,000 persons in auditoriums, in public meetings to discuss the plan. So we have to hear the communities by regulation. Myself, as the planning director, went for more than 120 public meetings along those 2 years. And the mayor was behind all that debate, all the time leading the process. So it's very, very complex. For us, it's normal. But when I think about that, sometimes I think we are crazy. But that's what brings sustainability and what Mayor has said, continuity. Because if you as a mayor want to reinvent the city, wow, you have a huge challenge, because you have to demonstrate that everyone is wrong and you have the right. And we are Catholic in Colombia, so that's a kind of messianic proposal.
So you can see that theirs is like a very institutionalized procedures. So before the mayor stepped down, they have gone through, like he said, 120 meetings. So they have put in place the initiative, which I think over the next 12 years, is it? Over the next 12 years, which means 3 mayors' term, they are not allowed to change this long-term vision, which already created. And of course, along the way, if the mayor wants to change any of this, he has to answer to the whole community that have come out and participated in this initiative. So it's quite different, all right? But I think this is where the communities, they are empowered to do so. I have the opportunity to actually witness one of the, what they call, the districts are given 5% of the budget, and they are allowed to do anything they feel, like what Mayor said, the leaders will decide what sector, what kind of work they want. So this particular one I went to, it's really for the children of the area. They wanted to do art pieces and the community, because they want the children to have a social networking and also at the same time learning arts. It's truly quite interesting to see that they really spend the budget. Everyone is different, right? Okay, any other questions?
I'd
Your
like
second
to ask.
question? Okay, good.
Oh, actually, you answered my second question, which is the 5% budget. So.
I'm Tan Kini, architect. I'm a fan of Colombian coffee. I really love Colombian coffee, so I feel very at home today. Yes. I have a very simple question to ask. It's remarkable you have reduced the violence from such a high percentage to almost 0 now. I just want to know, what do you do with the bad guys? Where are they? Second question is that, usually, when a city is successful, like Shanghai, like Istanbul, like, you name it, Berlin, you will attract a lot of illegal immigrants. And then you will end up having a lot of ghettos. Do you have such problems? And if so, how do you resolve the problem? Because you are being successful now, So other cities, other provinces will come to your city. My third question is that I'm very interested to hear you collaborate with another Spanish city, Barcelona. And I can see that your aesthetic is kind of like Spanish, which is remarkable. I'd like to know how the collaboration with Barcelona benefited you. Those are the questions. Thanks.
First question.
Yes.
What to do with the bad guys?
Yes.
Here we are. He's a bad guy initially, fully transformed.
Well, well, it will may seems like a joke, but it's part of the answer.
Yeah.
Violence, as I understand, is a very complex problem. But one of the more important sources of violence is if the people don't have opportunities. And especially if you are younger people. Not only in Medellín, but in every city that you have high levels of violence, the 75, 80% of violent people is young, violent people, young. It's because they don't have opportunities. Not all, but almost all. If you don't give him opportunities, they have a lot of energy. When you are young, you have a lot of energy. And you have a lot of necessities. What do you do with that? You take the wrong way. And the wrong way is violence. And the wrong way is drugs. And if you give opportunities to these people, you take away of the wrong way most of them. Not all, but most of them. And we work in opportunities. And two of the most important opportunities for young people and for people of all ages are education and work. Let me ask you, if you has 18 years and you don't have work and you don't have education, what do you do with your life? But if you have education and you have work, it is different. And the other way, with the minority that maybe is thinking to take the wrong way, even if we gave him education and work, you need to give it to them authority, for sure. You need to have authority, you need to have the legal use of the force of the state to say stop. That is the combination to, in our way of think, manage that problem. The second one was, the second one question? Immigration. Yeah. Yes. Yes, but let me, we have a lot of internal immigration in Colombia and in Medellín. And we have immigration because of principally two factors. First of all, violence. Not only in Medellín, but in Colombia in the last 20, 30, 40 years, we have high levels of violence. And with this high level of violence, the people of other cities and the people of the rural areas come to Medellín because we are going well, we are doing well. And like we show in the slides, that people comes to the surrounded areas of our city. How we manage that? We manage that with all the programs that they show, but we can emphasize someone, Circumvent Garden, because the people that comes from other parts of Colombia to Medellín don't go to the central part, don't go to the riches, go to the borders. And we need to give them quality of life. We cannot abandon them. And we are making the articulated strategy of the Circumvent Garden. But we don't have immigration for other countries. That is another problem with other difficulties. Because we are so young in our success. Maybe in the future it can happen. But now we don't have international immigration to our city and our country in general. And third is, well, cooperation with Barcelona. We have a very strong relationship with Barcelona. I sincerely hope that now and in the future we make some strong cooperation with Singapore, because I think this is a wonderful, wonderful city with wonderful leaders and people. And even if you need to organize, do travel, flight 36 hours, it is very interesting to strong relation between cities and cities like Medellín and like Singapore. And how works our relation with Barcelona? For example, in the Jardín de Moravia, with the technical support in that case, especially in between universities. That is a very important form to share knowledge and to help work each other. But it's not only cooperation in the way from Barcelona to Medellín. We cooperate from Medellín to Barcelona. They take our best practices and we take the Barcelona best practices.
You take your coffee to the day.
Yeah. Everywhere in the world, take our best. We have the best coffee in the world. Yeah.
Yes, some comments. Well, I think if you go to the barrios today for the participatory processes, you will find leaders of 42, 45 years that 25 years before were young people in risk of being part of the gangs. So the participatory process started the transformation of that communities, as Mayor has said, through opportunities. So those communities...
Don't ask what he is doing 30 years ago.
But that's very important, because I think we were able to use that critical situation, trying to invite everyone, including the gangs, to think together. So I think it's the only way to work about inclusive processes, which are very difficult, because, for instance, when you have problems like the homicide of former Mayor Gaviria's brother, you have to pardon a lot. So our city has been able to superate that. Okay, because all those killed people, it's in our hearts, still there. So that's very important. So people is there, but we used the governance of institutions for justice, the police, the governments, to create new ways of leading the society. Immigration is very complex, but it's internal, as Mayor has said, but it's very difficult because that is what I meant thinking about multi-scale planning. If we don't contribute for the planning of the region, we will keep on having the same problem. So we will also work about equality or equity in terms of regional planning. Because if we have a strong city in the middle, surrounded by poverty, and it's unviable. So we have to do at the same time the municipal and the regional scale. And third, Barcelona, it's been very close to Medellín for many years. We're not close to Barcelona by Messi or things like that. We started to have that many years ago. In 1991, Mayor Maragall from Barcelona, for instance, went to Medellín to contribute for those processes, social processes. But when I became the Dean of the School of Architecture in 1990, well, let's remember that José Luis Sert, the planner in 1950, was from Barcelona. In 1993, when I became the Dean of the school, we used the school as a lab, as an urban lab for the city. And we used the experience of Spain through democracy, because they were starting the democratic process, to understand what we could do. So we invited a lot of people from Barcelona and also from Seville and Madrid to understand what could we do to use urbanism and planning for that. So we created two things. We learned from them, but we also created a generation of young architects involved in public matters. So when we have to act, to intervene in the city, we have hundreds of young architects prepared, trained to work inside the city. And many good practices that the city has today as public policies were invented inside the workshops and inside the academia along the 90s. So that's why I mean with saying that it's a process, that a process is a long-term thing that starts with first stage but then has results. That's what we have done with Barcelona. And as Mayor has said, now we cooperate among us. We share experiences in both directions.
Well, it does help when they speak the same language, right? Well, it's getting late. If anyone has any last burning question, if it's not, I think we'll put it to a close. Anybody has a last burning question to us? Well, if it's not, I think this has been truly inspiring. I hope you have taken away with you also new story, not just about Singapore, but about the Laureate City, how they have come from the lowest to the highest it is today, a livable, a vibrant, sustainable, urban, high urban quality of life. And ladies and gentlemen, please put our hand together to thank Mayor Gaviria and Dr.